everyone, and welcome to the AHA Lunch and Learn session. This is being organized by the Young Hearts, the Council of Young Hearts, and I wanted to welcome everyone here this afternoon. We are going to be talking about how to leverage social media to advance your career, and we have a list of great speakers here for you today. Feel free to ask questions. We would love for it to be very interactive. So please, towards the end, we've kept some time for questions. So, put it in the chat or, feel free to, unmute and ask. I think we can do that. We'll figure that out. But, please feel free to ask any of the panelists any questions. I also wanted to tell everyone that Lunch and Learn session is organized by the AHA to pick up a topic and educate, especially the junior faculty and young trainees. So the next one is scheduled on Abstract Presentation 101, Keys to a Successful Abstract Acceptance and Presentation, which will be on the 25th of April at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you're interested, do sign up for that one. And without further ado, let me call on stage Dr. Brittany Hills, who is going to be our first speaker for today.
So I'm kicking this off on really about the how and the why and getting started with a niche in social media. So we'll go through what's really the purpose of social media in medicine, why social media in cardiology and academics, new age mentors and how to find guidance, as well as finding your brand. So we'll start off with the purpose of social media in medicine. So why do we even use social media in medicine? First, to spread medical news, really looking at research breakthroughs, even something as simple as finding a job, spreading information about conferences, and then sharing updates in clinical practice. Along with that, we also use it to connect to our medical colleagues, as well as medical education and advocacy, which I'll be going into a little bit more detail here. So first up, let's think about how we can spread medical news. So I am always going to be repping for PAC3 and PC4, the Pediatric Acute Care Cardiology Collaborative, as well as the Pediatric Critical Care Cardiology Collaborative. But I have used social media quite often to both spread information about conference dates and how to register and how to sign up. You also can find what we said is job boards multiple times through some of these avenues. And then even more importantly, there's lots of medical updates, as you see here from Dr. Gaze out of Cincinnati, just talking about different studies and sometimes even just little tweet tutorials, letting us know exactly what a study was about in a very short synopsis instead of reading a whole article, which can also be quite nice. Next up, it connects you to your medical colleagues. As someone who is a part of the Peloton cult, I definitely appreciate Peloton Med Twitter. It's not run by Peloton at all, but it connected me to a lot of different folks who also enjoy Peloton as their way of exercising. And then why social media and cardiology and academics? So this is where I talked about a little bit about medical education and advocacy. So here you can see that there's just a free online opportunity for students to learn more about cardiology. And then even more recently, we have things like what happened with the STS at their conference and speaking about that slide that went viral. I do believe that social media had a very big impact on making sure that this was not something that was just swept under the rug, but talked about and forced to make a very large society actually extend an apology message to the community, which I think is really important. And even for the American Heart Association, with the retraction of the article that shall not be named, but you can see it here, a big force of this all was social media and having people champion to say that, hey, this isn't right, and what can we do about it? So I do think that social media has a very big part in advocacy. And then let's think about kind of our new age, mentors, and really how to find guidance in this field. So for your mentors, so finding guidance, really sliding in somebody's DMs, essentially, which I have done and other people have done from a professional standpoint. So first of all, you have to figure out who are you actually following and what topics that you want to follow, especially on Twitter. So you can actually select your follow preferences. So for me, some of the common ones that I have are health equity, cardiology, of course, and then of course also medical education, which is an interest of mine. However, you can switch it up. I also have entertainment, and I follow, celebrities and other things that are non-medical. And then follow groups that are suggested. Oftentimes when you follow one person, sometimes they'll come up in a batch of people that are like-minded to what you might want to follow. And sometimes you can follow 20 people at a time and see if that's something that works for you. And then reach out to those people that share interests and then connect. Next up, finding your brand. So the biggest things that I saw consistently when looking up this for my own self is the first number one thing is just being yourself. You have to be genuine. You have to find your own voice. Don't try to be anyone else. Don't try to reinvent who you are, but just being yourself is going to come off way better than pretending to be someone else. Pick a topic. So what do you actually want to share? You don't have to share everything. You don't have to share your life. If you want it to be all medical education, that's what it can be, but do it in your voice. Be consistent. So try not to hop around to many different topics so that you can make sure that you're focusing on the one that you want to use the most. And then also know your audience. So you want to cater to the target audience that you have and cater to those followers. So if you are targeting millennials, you may do one thing versus Gen Z, you might be on TikTok rather than Twitter because you're not going to find a bunch of Gen Z on Twitter. And then lastly, always add your handle. So thank you so much for my time, and I'll be here to answer more questions. And I'll be kicking this off to Dr. Ansong. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for being here this afternoon. My name is Annette Ansong, and I'm a pediatric cardiologist here at Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C., and I have no disclosures. I was tasked with talking about not being basic on social media, and the subtopics for that will be how to present yourself, being aware of pitfalls that can occur with being on social media, and tips for beginners. So to start, in presenting yourself, I think it's important to figure out what platform you want to be on. And if we're strictly talking about advancing your career or being promoted or looking for promotion in your career, then I think for me, hands down, it's LinkedIn as the best resource for professional development. The others, the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, I think of those as more recreational social media, where I'm showing my vacations and the foods I'm eating and that type of thing. So LinkedIn is where I'll be focusing most of my talk on. So I think in presenting yourself, I would challenge you to come up with a mission statement. You want to have some type of goal, or what is it that you want to accomplish with social media? Is it that you want to be a thought leader in preventative cardiology or EP or single ventricle care? Or even adult congenital, what is it that you're trying to accomplish professionally? Because that will help you sort of come up with your sales pitch to the world as you present your material out in social media. And as the saying goes, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So I would say make this pitch very nice and tight. And on LinkedIn, there's a summary portion of it. Sorry, I don't have any pictures of that, but so you want to make sure your summary is very clear so that those reading it have an idea of what you're about without reading more into it. The next thing you want to do in presenting yourself is building on your credibility. So, we're all physicians, we have the diploma, certificates, all that to show that, but online, it's a different story. People don't know who you are and they want to believe who you say you are in order for them to stick with you online. So part of that is really bragging on yourself, posting the talks you've given, the webinars that you're a part of, the awards you receive, articles that you've written. And for us as physicians, it can be a little bit of a challenge because we're not wired to do that, right? We're sort of head down, get the work done, and everything else is just extra. We're not taught to brag about ourselves, but you got to do it. You really have to sort of break that mold and be able to do that. And a part of, creating your online presence is having that creativity because you're telling your story on social media. And again, as physicians, we're not wired to do this as much, but just sort of having to change that mindset. I would also say that you're using LinkedIn, getting recommendations, there's a portion where people can, recommend you and things like that. So if at all possible, having people sort of build into your credibility by doing these recommendations for you as well adds further to that. Now, in regards to being aware of pitfalls that may occur with having an online presence, I would say in deciding what to post and how much to post, just using common sense. And also realizing that every action has a reaction, meaning that if you're going to post something controversial, then, don't be surprised if you get some controversial remarks coming back at you, so just be smart about what you post. And especially if you're doing it on professional sites like a LinkedIn, where you're amongst your peers and perhaps someone who may be wanting to hire you in the future as well. And knowing that, we may be long and gone, but our digital footprint remains. It's immortal. And in some cases, it may even be discoverable if, God forbid, you're caught up in a law, suit or case of something of that sort as well. So you want to post as though everyone can see it and knowing that it will be with you forever. I would also say, just in general, just things you learned in kindergarten, just being respectful of people and posts that you put up in general. Making sure that your posts or your tweets align with your goals and the mission statement that you've hopefully created early on. In regards to friending your patients online or accepting friend invitations, it was the Journal of Medical Ethics that actually discourages doing so. It's not a HIPAA violation to friend a patient, but the waters can become very murky, and you may inadvertently, give away some PHI and having some online discussions with your patients that could get you in trouble. So just really keeping clear the boundaries between the physician-patient relationship. Then you should also be aware of the social media policy of your organization. And if you don't know what it is, contacting someone in, HR, or if you have marketing and PR folks at your job, they can probably sort of clue you in to that stuff as well. So my tips for beginners would be to just dive in regards to social media, just do it, just like Nike, just do it. And being comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it can be very scary for us, especially for us as physicians, because we're not used to talking about ourselves and showing stuff off about ourselves. But my thing is, we do such great work and people aren't going to know about it unless you put it out there in the universe. And there are a lot of great things that people are doing. So, just go ahead and do it. And also, like Dr. Hill says, you want to be consistent with your postings because you want to maintain a presence. And if you're on again, off again, it makes it hard for people to sort of stick with you and follow you. The last thing I'd probably say is that remember that we're all unique and valuable individuals like a diamond. There's no one like you, and it's incumbent upon you to share your gifts and talents with the world. And that's where social media can be helpful in doing so. So with that, I will turn it now over to Dr. Bonsall.
So I've been tasked with talking about different types of social media platforms that we have and what is good to share and what are some of the do's and the don'ts of the different platforms that we have. And I'm so glad Dr. Ansong touched on LinkedIn because I'm going to be focusing on Twitter. So something different for everyone. I have no disclosures either. So just to kind of go over what the objectives of my talk were, to review the different types of social media and how they've been used in pediatric cardiology, some examples of how each of these platforms are used, what are the pros and cons of some of these platforms, and how to integrate social media in your work life workflow. So as people have already discussed, social media is impactful. We have, and more people are recognizing, hospitals are recognizing that, you know, people are absorbing information from social media. We saw it during the COVID pandemic. Social media was a huge source of information for people. A lot of the cancer patients use this to connect with peers. A lot of the health organizations, like health departments, have social media channels which they use to you know, spread awareness and important information. And you can see here 65% of the radiologists use social media for various health related reasons. So we know that there are certain benefits to the social media in the healthcare industry. And, you know, talking about advantages and disadvantages, not to like kind of repeat, but, you know, some of the things that have been said, you know, it is, you can share information very quickly. You can spread awareness of events, even your events that you're hosting. For example, this Lunch and Learn. You know, you have cost-effective marketing. You can showcase your accomplishment activities. You know, as Dr. Ansong said, that we are taught not to kind of brag about ourselves, but this is one place where you can kind of showcase your accomplishments. You can provide live updates. You can communicate during the times of crises, especially we saw how important that was during the COVID pandemic. You can facilitate conversation with patients occasionally. Sometimes people from different parts of the world have reached out to me about certain like challenging patient stories that they have, you know, asking me what I would do in that situation, and I've been able to kind of help them. And it is definitely a tool for professional development. So you have job searches that are available. You have trending research findings that you have. What is hot? What is the hot topic right now that everyone wants to talk about? And of course, like you can also use it for health related research. So you can use it as a recruitment platform too. Some population health that is out there, you can use the social media platform, especially those that are used by general public more often than medical personnel for recruiting patients. Obviously, there are privacy concerns. There's, you know, you have to be careful not to have HIPAA violations. You have to remember, I think this is the one thing that I've learned over a period of time, is that this is still non-vetted information that is out there in the media. And yes, there are research papers that are cited, but you do have to open that research paper and kind of read it for yourself to make your own opinion, and don't be colored by the opinions of the people that are posting them. Please do not practice medicine online. This platform is not telling you to give patient you know, advice. It's always better to do that after seeing the patient in your clinic. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And like Dr. Ansong said, that there are Brittany, somebody said that, you know, you will, if you post something controversial, you will have trolls come after you. So be careful. You know, negative comments is unfortunately something that we cannot run away from. And it is time consuming. We have to remember that this is our unpaid time. This is our personal time that we have to invest in this. And we have to be careful about this whole free speech. You know, there was a nurse who was fired in Philadelphia after posting radically charged rant about Black Lives Matter or something like that. And, you know, we just have to be careful of what we post out there, even as, you know, especially if you're affiliated to a professional hospital. And, you know, getting fired because of a social media post is an infringement of First Amendment. Yes, a lot of people believe that, but at the same time, a lot of people don't understand how their online actions could affect their professional lives. And it's important to remember, again, social media can help or even hurt your career. And it is important to take it, you know, use it with a lot of good judgment. So just talking a little bit, and Twitter is sort of like my forte, and I'm going to like focus a little bit on Twitter. So I got introduced to Twitter by some of my friends who are in the adult cardiology world, and I kind of quickly realized the importance of being on some of these groups and recognizing the hashtags and the importance of the hashtags and things like that. So we have to remember Twitter, a lot of medical communities present. Obviously, it's not some of them post about their vacations and things like that, but you know, there is a decent amount, especially in the adult world, a lot of medical communities present, especially in the adult cardiology world. A lot of people are present on Twitter, and they post about their research papers, some educational tutorials, the advertisements for job opportunities, fourth-year fellowships, advanced fellowships. It is very beneficial for networking. I have realized that over a period of time, when I've been on Twitter, I have made Twitter friends that I have finally met at very different different conferences that I've enjoyed meeting, and we connect. So it's really good for networking. Again, a lot of research papers are advertised, some of it is self-promotion, but, you can kind of, as the paper comes out, you can quickly take a look and then read the actual paper. A lot of people from especially different parts of the world that you post about pathology that you've never seen. They post pictures of angiograms, unique MRIs that are out there, and it can sometimes be very interesting to see EKG findings. So I have found that really like an interesting read during my downtime. And like I said, a lot of it is adult cardiology based, but hopefully like more and more young generation pediatric cardiology people are going to join, and we can move the field forward. And how it started was, the whole adult cardiology interventional world started with the hashtag radial first, and they changed an entire interventional cardiology field just with a hashtag. So it has great power. Similarly, I know that MRI world is pushing, YCMR as their hashtag, and they're trying to, move the field forward with using more and more MRIs. So it's very important to learn the right hashtags to be able to get to the right audience. And by that, over a period of time, you will learn who to tag, who not to tag, what are some of the hashtags that are very popular. A lot of the academic institutions have their divisions, department, Twitter handles on there that they post about job opportunities, they post about didactics at their sessions, some of the events that they host. And, a lot of it is about self-promotion. Yes, you should definitely promote what you're doing, your research papers that are out there, and, build your brand like the speakers before me have said. And just remember always that social media is not a vetted peer review. Remember to always go back and read the paper before you start to endorse anything. Remember that, you need to make your own sound judgment before you start to endorse any of the things that are said on social media. So just showing you some examples, I run the social media handle for Action Learning Network, so just showing out there how some of the Action Network has used Twitter. So for example, this is one example of, a talk that was given at one of the meetings, and they if you wanted to learn more about HeartMate 3 device, which is one of the most common ventricular assist device that is being used, you can learn about it. You can log on to this particular channel, and you can learn more about how you can use the right device and settings. And I think this is very beneficial for some people, especially in the different parts of the country where they don't have access to a lot of the training modules, a lot of the reps, a lot of the industry partners that we have access to in the United States, to be able to get access to educational materials. Pediatric Heart Transplant Society kind of puts this Throwback Thursday where they talk about different, one of the first ever pediatric heart transplant papers that came out on a particular topic. So for example, this was, one of the first papers on post-transplant outcomes for patients who had a ventricular assist device before transplant. So they do a Throwback Thursday, and you can always read the full paper. They give you the link, but it's just interesting to see how far we've come, from this is not that far back, but ventricular assist device world is new. And then self-promotion, like I just did before we started the webinar here, this is happening now, and spread the message and try to have as many people join you. And it also serves as a reminder to people who might have registered and then they get sidetracked. This is an example of a tutorial. So for example, Action uses Twitter as a it's like multi-layered message that is there. It talks about one of the papers from Action investigators that came out about patients who were on a single ventricle patients who were on a ventricular assist device. So they talk about the key findings of that research study. So at a glance, you can kind of see within 3 messages what the research study was all about. And then you can obviously, you have the link to the full paper, and then you can go and read the full paper if you're interested. But it kind of gives you a snippet of the different research research findings that are coming out from different fields. And then of course, reminders, like for example, recruitment. So this is the Berlin Heart Active Driver Trial. So this kind of tells a lot of the sites that how many patients are enrolled, how many sites are enrolled. And then, if your site is not a part of it, then you kind of know, oh, hey, I could be a part of that trial. And then that helps with recruitment. And then of course, reminders about various webinars or learning sessions or virtual sessions. I have learned so much from listening. I know we're all zoomed out to a certain extent, but we're all still interested in learning about different parts of our medical life from different people. So I've listened to lectures from people in Europe and Asia, and been able to know about them through Twitter, which has been exciting. And then of course, advocacy, that is a big part of why Twitter is used. You can talk about patient stories, you can engage patients, you can generate funds, you can do a lot of advocacy for your part of either pediatric cardiology or any other division that you work for. And you can generate awareness amongst patients, amongst families, and they do feel good when you talk about their stories. Obviously, it has to be HIPAA cleared. You have to get the right permission to take these pictures, post these pictures. And, every hospital has their own rules and policies. But, all these patients were correctly, the consents were signed. So these are all legit pictures. But yeah, be careful of what videos you take, what pictures you take and you post. But if you do have any patients who are interested, trust me, these kind of stories go a long way in patient and family engagements. Talking just briefly about LinkedIn. So yeah, there's definitely a larger community that is present, that is, in the medical community. It definitely helps in networking, advertisements, lots of job opportunity, recruitments, people talk about the latest research, the latest collaborations that people form. A lot of academic institutions are on LinkedIn, and, it is very important for you to have some presence. And building your brand goes, whether it's Twitter, whether it's LinkedIn, you have to promote yourself. But again, remember, you have to open that research paper and read for yourself before you, make an opinion and start posting again. So for me, Twitter and LinkedIn kind of go hand in hand. Obviously, LinkedIn has a larger community. So it depends on what kind of community base you're going for and what kind of brand you wanted to build. Talking briefly about Facebook. Medical community is not really present, and I don't think people use Facebook as a professional way of interaction amongst, medical community. However, it is very patient friendly. You have a lot of advocacy groups. You have a lot of different disease groups. Like there's a cardiomyopathy group that I don't know how I got in, but I got in. It's a patient group. And, I sometimes I'm a fly on the wall and I kind of read the comments, and, it's so important for parents to vent, to know that they're not alone, to meet other people and, talk about, hey, did you go through this? Did you go through that? And, it is so important for generating awareness, using those platforms for advocacy. And a lot of academic institutions are there, and you can use it for self-promotion, but I think a lot of the people use it for raising awareness and patient support. Very similar with Instagram. There are people you can follow somebody like Pete's Doc Talk, who has over 250,000 followers, and she talks mainly about general peds, like what to do in the flu season and how to protect your toddlers and what are some of the things that you should and shouldn't do. Or Nurse Blake, who's almost close to 1 million followers and is very famous and talks about not just bringing how nursing, unfortunately we were part of a strike at Mount Sinai recently where, staffing issues and, coverage issues and, bringing all of those advocacy things to up front. As you know, that Instagram uses a lot more of your face out there. You have to be really using the visual part of your your brain more and generate content. And it is very time consuming, and not a lot of people are very successful, but people who are successful are very successful. So if you're good at making those short videos and making it about education, advocacy, or self-promotion, go for it. Definitely Instagram is a growing platform. Podcast is where I have dabbled with a little bit. I have my own podcast called In the Flow. which is about conversations with people who are pioneers in pediatric heart transplant. It is a very community-friendly medical community or patient, community friendly, because you can listen to it at will, whether you're driving, whether you're running, jogging. You can talk about different cases, or you can talk about, like my podcast is there. It is about just in general how this, ABO incompatible heart transplants came about. How did you even think of that topic, so that people can, find inspirations in different parts of life. And you can listen to it during your personal time, your working out time, or anything, and you're able to curate your own playlist. Or you can look at PD Heart, which is Pediatric Cardiology Today, which is run by Dr. Pass, and he picks up one journal topic or one article that's published, and then speaks with the author about that topic. So there are different ways to curate your own podcast. It is very time consuming, I can tell you. It is extremely intense, because you have to like edit it, you have to then think about posting it, where you're going to post it. So it is very time consuming, but it's very rewarding, because it's kind of there for a long time, and for different generation of people to listen to the topics. And very similar to that, oh, I'm sorry about that, the topic is YouTube here. So again, very similar to podcasts, you can kind of curate your own topics. It's not as agile at podcasts, because you cannot really download and listen to it during your drives. But at the same time, video consumption is more engaging than audio consumption for some people. So some people put their podcasts up as a video as well, so that you can see people interacting. So that is another way of thinking how to kind of put your topics out there. And how to integrate just quickly your social media into your work life. You have to be committed to developing content. So like people before me have said, you have to post regularly, whether it's about lectures, maybe there was a great grand rounds that you attended and there were some key takeaway points, or an education thread about some great topic that you read about, maybe just like 3 or 4 points from that, childhood anemia, or something very simple. I think if you take like key takeaways from every particular thing that you read and create it into an educational thread, I think that would be helpful. Research papers, start with your own, something that you publish, like you should put it out there. You should talk about what are the key takeaways from that. If you attend any national or international conferences and you attend a great session, you should definitely tweet about or post about that on various platforms. And maybe if you put like some key learning features from that particular session, and that is very helpful for the community at large, and you're educating them. You have to support others, obviously. Like if you see somebody doing great work, support your colleagues, support your friends. You can retweet with your interpretation. Again, please remember to read that particular article, and don't just retweet, but what is your interpretation of that article? You should showcase your accomplishments. What are some of the activities that you're doing? And you can showcase your division or your departments. Sometimes I showcase, other people in my division, what they are doing, to help, lift others with you. And the more you do, the more you do. So, the more you do, you get engaged, you have more followers, and you start to love it. You understand, you build friends. It's just like anything, when you invest time, you will start to enjoy it more and more. There is an initial time investment. It has to be purposeful in the beginning. But, you can use aids, like, for example, for Twitter, I sometimes use something called Hootsuite, which is basically you schedule your weekly tweets in one go, and then it automatically keeps posting. So you don't have to all the time keep logging in, keep posting things. Try to be a social media manager or assistant social media manager for some of these big communities. AHA has their own Twitter handle. You could try to be a social media manager. You can try to learn from other people who have been social media managers. And there are a lot of people who are now trying to see how using bots and things like that on Twitter to do research. I mean, that's up and coming. But, that is another platform to think about research platforms. But always remember, with great power comes great responsibility. So you have to really use the social media, all these channels very carefully, and always think before you endorse, and think before you post something out there, because like somebody said before me, like, once it's out there, your digital thumbprint is like there forever. So, and if you have any questions, please reach out to me anytime. Thank you. And I'm going to pass it on to David Warho after me for the last talk of the afternoon.
This is switching gears a little bit. So now we sort of gave you a broad overview of social media in your professional life, but how do we use our engagement and our output on social media in order to further our career or advance our career? So I'm going to talk about the scholarship of teaching, integration, and application, and really how to use social media to get promoted. I am now an associate professor in pediatrics at UC San Diego and a pediatric cardiac intensivist at Rady Children's Hospital. I have no disclosures. And briefly, I will discuss Boyer's scholarly domains and how they relate to social media. I will describe Hutching and Schulman's criteria for the scholarship of teaching. I'll talk about creating a digital scholarship mission statement, and then how to optimize the appraisal of your social media for your academic promotion packet. Before I start, there's a few background points. Obviously, there's various frameworks for academic promotion, and every university system is going to have a different sort of pathway, and even within a university, there's different tracks. So your mileage may vary, is my disclaimer, because all systems are different, and depending, whether you're on a ladder track or a tenure track or a clinical track, and depending what university you're at, the way that you're going to have to present your social media usage for the purposes of scholarly activity are going to be different. So my key point before we even get started on the nuts and bolts is to understand your system and engage with folks in your system who've been successful, and do that early and regularly, because mentorship is really going to help you. And unfortunately, there's no one size fits all for this, but I will go over some of the key fundamentals that you just have to keep in mind as you're preparing your packet. So obviously, a major part of promotion for anyone in academic medicine is scholarship. And so I will talk briefly about Boyer's scholarly domains, which are the scholarship of discovery, application, integration, and teaching. First, the scholarship of discovery is what we all kind of know as traditional research. So this is building new knowledge. It's original research. Your output will be things like peer-reviewed publications. But it is possible to use social media as sort of a piece of this scholarship, meaning if you're doing a study, like one of my former mentors, Kurt Schumacher, got an article in Pediatrics about using social media to study rare diseases. And he was studying Fontan patients, and obviously that is a rare disease, but he utilized Facebook for recruitment, as Dr. Bonsall had mentioned earlier. So there are ways to use social media and to check this box of the scholarship of discovery. Scholarship of application is putting knowledge to work or using knowledge to aid society. And so often comes in the forms traditionally as things like recommendations or statements or white papers, also leadership in organizations. But in the realm of social media, this can be things like tutorials on new science. You are helping folks understand how to interpret or how to approach their own interpretation of a paper. So Dr. Gaze is getting a lot of shout outs today, but this is an example of a tutorial. And so he basically talked about our cardiac arrest prevention paper, which was published in JAMA Peds. And there's like 14 tweets that follow this about the thought process and the science of the paper. And then obviously there's a ton of engagement with that. And there are ways for you to frame your tutorial as an academic work product, depending on your institution. And I'll go into some more specifics about that a little bit later. The scholarship of integration is interpreting or synthesizing the use of knowledge across disciplines. So typically this is a thing like a literature review or a comprehensive curriculum development. But in the social sciences, it can be something, or in social media, it can be something like a podcast that merges social sciences and cardiac intensive care. So for instance, this podcast talks about coaching and human factors awareness in the cardiac ICU. So there are ways to use social media to do the scholarship of integration. And then finally, the scholarship of teaching. This is not teaching what, how you or I think of teaching. So the scholarship of teaching is actually studying teaching to optimize learning. And so this is things like learning theory, doing medical education research. In social media, an output type could be a blog about adult learning theory and cardiology, which this is from a Knowledge to Practice blog page about adult learning theory and cardiology. So there are ways to integrate social media into all four of Boyer's scholarly domains. But when we're going up for promotion or when we're trying to advance our career with this, there's ways that these promotion committees are going to be evaluating us. And so back in the 90s, Hutchins and Schulman put forth these criteria for evaluating scholarship. And basically you have to say yes to all three. Is it public? Is it available for peer review and critique in the standard for that profession? Is it available to be reproduced and extended by other scholars and teachers? And so almost all social media checks all these boxes. Yes, almost all social media is public. Almost all social media is available for peer review, meaning that people can always like retweet or post on whatever you post, although maybe that's not the standard for the discipline of medicine. So this is where you might want to sell it by showcasing the quality and impact. And then yes, it is able to be reproduced and extended. So this reframing it by showcasing quality and impact is really how you're going to convince your promotions and tenure committee, or whatever you call it at your institution, academic review committee, that you have engaged in scholarly work through social media. And so this is my favorite paper. Sorry, it's Western Journal of Emergency Medicine. It's cut off up there. But I asked for early promotion to associate professor a couple years ago, just after this paper had come out. And I used like a lot of this paper to help put my packet together, and it was successful. And so I love this paper. I think it's one of the best papers on how to showcase your digital scholarship in your promotion packet. And they have things like a ton of tables and examples for you to craft your CV and your mission statement and all of these things in order to exactly what I said, showcase your impact or the quality of your work. And so talking a little bit about impact, you really want to show that your work is reaching an intended audience. And there's all these examples of supporting data. And then they gave some examples here with specific metrics that you can use. And so you can do this for almost every social media work product that you're putting on your CV. And that's a way to showcase impact. You obviously want to showcase your role or demonstrate your brand within your digital scholarship. And so if you're invited to a podcast, say invited to a podcast, and then they have examples for all of these things in this paper. And then finally, quality is obviously very important. And that's sort of the Achilles heel of social media, is that there is this perception that the quality is lesser than. However, there are now ways for you to demonstrate quality in your work. And so they gave an example of a blog post where they utilize some of these existing metrics to showcase the quality of that work in their CV. So I definitely recommend this paper for everyone. I do have several other papers that I'll talk about briefly that are also very helpful, but this is probably the best one. So next, many of us in medical education are familiar with having your educator's portfolio as a part of your promotion packet. Well, think about this as your digital footprint portfolio. It is recommended that you create a digital scholarship mission statement and that you revisit that from time to time, because that will really help you not just share with the committee what is your mission for digital scholarship, but also it'll help you reevaluate, like, am I on track? Am I doing what I set out to do from the very beginning? And so these are all from that last paper that I shared, but reinforce why your digital scholarship exists and why it's important to their field. Explain your goals and objectives, explain your perception of the needs in the modern learning environment and how that affects your methods. Explain how your approach to digital scholarship has changed or evolved. Explain the niche that you're filling, specifically highlighting how your role at your institution gives you a reputable voice. Describe how your scholarship complements your digital scholarship complements your other more traditional forms of scholarship. And then explain how it aligns with your overall career objectives, name your intended target audience, and describe other collateral groups that may benefit. Describe best practices for ensuring the quality of your digital content creation process. Highlight team-based and interdisciplinary scholarship as markers of quality, and preview external validation processes of your digital scholarship, just like all those examples that I showed you from that paper. And then finally, highlight the ancillary benefits that have arisen because of your digital scholarship presence, such as invited lectures, collaborations. So when I put my packet together, these were many examples that I used to say my digital footprint has put me in leadership for all of these different things in the first 4 years of my career. And that's purely based on my social media engagement. And so, and not based on the science that I do or the other work. And so that's really impactful for a promotions committee to see that if you're doing something on social and it leads to leadership in like places like AHA or PC4 or journals and things like that, then it truly is worthwhile and worthy of promotion. So now looking at the different sort of pillars of academic promotion, there's 4 that we're all evaluated on, and there may be some weighting to certain of these that are a little more heavily weighted versus others. I think it's really hard to use social media in clinical productivity because it can often be anti-productive, but you can definitely use it for these other ones. So teaching and education, you can create free open access medical education resources or enduring products. Scholarship and creative works, you can do research in social media like the stuff I showcased earlier. You can create digital products on social media. You can curate social media or do that sort of translational piece. And then for service, obviously, as I showcased, social media involvement can lead to leadership, committee membership, editorships, and also maybe even a local leadership role at your institution. And often, because social media in academic medicine can be scary for a lot of people, these are really easy ways to get your foot in the door. And so a lot of the big organizations in pediatric cardiology or in cardiology in general, some of the easiest committees to get onto are the ones based on social media, because a lot of people who are perhaps more well-known in their field or more science-based are a little bit trepidatious about getting involved in those committees. So it's a great way for early career faculty to really get your foot in the door. And like I said, there's tons of ancillary benefits to your career. So there's about 20 really pretty good papers on how to do this, but I've combed through all of them and read most of them so that you don't have to. And I'm just going to highlight 4. So this one from the Journal of Medical Internet Research has these examples of how to put it in your CV and like example formats for your CV. So that's this is a really great place to go for that. This one in the Journal of the American College of Radiology shows all the different components to your social media evaluation. So this is really going to help you understand what the committee is going through when they are thinking about promoting you. This resource from the Journal of GME, this gives you examples of how to assess your impact. So you don't want to go to your promotion committee and like oversell your impact. So it's really helpful to understand, like, is this a low, medium, or high impact work product? And then finally, this one from Perspectives in Medical Education, and this one from Postgrad Med Journal. They don't have as many of the examples and charts and stuff, but they are good reads as far as how to sort of put yourself in the right mindset. So those would be the papers that I recommend in this area. So in conclusion, social media and digital scholarship can be applied in all areas of scholarship and nearly all criteria for academic advancement. Understanding your system and preparing in advance with mentors and with resources from your own institution is critical. And having a clear mission statement can really keep you on track, and reevaluating this periodically is a good exercise for professional development and growth. So that is it for me, and we have a few minutes for questions. I saw some stuff pop up in the chat. We also have these general panelist questions if we want to talk about them. But Neha, is there anything in the chat that we should talk about first?
No, Rolando just shared with us one of the papers that he was part of, importance of tweeting, the discovery of MISC, live tweeting, the discovery of this COVID-related syndrome in children. And we saw that actually I think everyone saw the impact of social media sharing across the world with COVID, with the COVID pandemic. So thanks, Rolando, for sharing.
So then I guess we'll just go to the panel. Does everyone want to mention briefly, how did you get into social media? We only have a few minutes, so just a quick.
Sure. I think my first foray was with Facebook when that first came out, and just posting pictures. But I think in regards to like my where I started really interacting with social media, primarily Twitter, was with the ACC. They had a campaign called Faces of Cardiology, where they were trying to really promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's when I really got into Twitter, and I think somehow fell into LinkedIn and things like that, and then just went with it.
Mine was similar. So mine was actually a co-fellow who does ACHD, Dr. Nujafal, was somebody who ended up being like one of the Twitter ambassadors, I think, for ACC. And then I think was just telling me that, why aren't you on here? There's all these things that would be so interesting to you and to join up. But I got more heavily involved once I started running PAC3 social media, along with the committee that I chair, the Education Outreach Committee.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I saw some of my friends who are adult cardiology, and they get into Twitter, and that's how I sort of like followed.
And I was asked by a mentor to do it, and I had no idea what Twitter was at that point in my career, but I just went with it. And answering the next question, how did I learn to do it? I just kind of going to sessions like this, talking to other people who were successful in it. How did everyone else learn how to do it?
I winged it a little bit.
It is a lot of winging
people
it.
did.
Yeah, I think I think David, what you mentioned earlier about some of these committees, especially like in AHA, there are these committees, and it's so easy to get on membership, social media engagement committees. Some of the easier committees to get on, let me say, and you learn from your peers, you learn from other people, and yeah, some of it is of course with any new trick, you kind of trial and error method, but some of it, obviously hospitals have policies which are sometimes interesting to read, kind of give you insight, and then attending sessions like this, I think it's really helpful.
We don't have much time left, but is there anything that any of the panelists has as like a pointer or a learn from my mistake? What did you wish you did from the start?
I think in the beginning I was doing a lot of just like posting about sessions, like, oh, this session is happening, that session is happening. I think over the period of time I've learned that if I do the key takeaways from that session and like do it as an educational piece, I think that has more value, impact than just spreading awareness about that session.
I just wanted to add, I'm going to turn the question around a little bit about the impact that this has. But last year I went to the ACC meeting, and there were some residents, med students who wanted to go into cardiology who came up to me like, oh my gosh, Dr. Ansong, I follow you on Twitter. You're such, you're such an inspiration. And not trying to brag on myself, but I didn't realize how impactful like what I tweet or what I put up there was making a difference. And these were young Black women, and there's underrepresented minorities in the field of cardiology who were inspired by things that I had put up, and I didn't know who they were out there in the universe. So I think don't underestimate the impact that you truly do have in social media, and know that people are truly watching you.
Well, thank you, everybody. We are at the end of the hour. If there's any last audience questions, please put them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll get you all back to your day. And we appreciate you all for joining us. Good luck integrating social media into your career. And I do hope that it helps to your advancement. And don't forget to sign up for the next Lunch and Learn, which will be on abstracts in April.